What's up, IDP Army? It's your man, Jordan Rains, back again with the IDP Army podcast. This is where we talk mostly IDP, all fantasy football, as you all know that. And if you're listening, if you have been listening for a while, appreciate that. If it's your first time listening to the show, that's awesome. Welcome in. We are inclusive. We are disruptive. We are proficient. We're looking at fantasy football from all angles. We're trying to rebrand IDP. And we're doing the whole thing. Tonight, we are going to have a special guest, Bob Van, the IDP man. We are going to talk about the dynasty repercussions of this incoming rookie class for defensive line players. We're going to talk about how we are attacking the defensive line position this year, a little bit of strategy, a little bit of theory, what we learned in the last year or two and how we're going to apply that going forward. So, I'm going to go ahead and bring Bob in here, guys and gals. What's up, Bob? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm ready to talk some defensive line. Had a long day at work, so I'm ready to chop it up with you. Always down to talk IDP, always down to talk rookies and the upcoming season ahead. I'm just ready to rock and roll, man. So,
yes, sir. Friday night, it's a pretty popular time to go stream. I know the Rum Boys got something going on. If y'all pop in there, tell them what's up from us. There's a lot of good streams going on. If you're here with us, we appreciate that. If you're listening to the podcast, we appreciate that. Make sure you give us a 5-star review, a rating, and a review. We'd appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube, like, thumbs up, leave a comment, all that good stuff. We love that and appreciate that. If you want to live chat with us, we will take some questions here maybe towards the end. So Bob, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. We are going to be talking about the defensive line position. I kind of made a joke today because we had the movement from San Francisco, and I looked at my buddy and I was like, hey, the San Francisco is moving up, maybe they're going to go get another defensive line player because that seems to be all they take in the first round.
Nah, man, they got to go QB. I like the joke, but man, I couldn't imagine in this draft. I couldn't imagine.
There's nobody worth taking that high.
Yeah, well, and I think, the weird season, the weird COVID season, all these opt-outs, I think if Russo would have gotten another year to play and showcase what he brings, maybe. But I really feel like there's going to be a lot of value in this draft at the edge position specifically, just because it's such like an ambiguous season of there's no Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa, no, Clowney, even though he hasn't really been an IDP asset, but there's no that guy at the top of drafts that is just, wowing anybody. So it's going to be an interesting draft to see how it plays out with all that. But, it was nice to see some freaking draft movement, picks moving around and all that.
Yeah, the two big trades back to back. We got some young head coaches that know each other, making some moves. So the NFL is, it's getting more and more like fantasy football as we, guys are not afraid to, 1-year deals. People are flipping players, all that stuff. Guys, gals, if you want to check out our full breakdown of the IDP rookie rankings coming into this class, that's going to be available on the Patreon, the Black Ops tier. Actually, Bob here helped us curate the rookie rankings on there. They're tiered up. You will get that when you sign up for the Black Ops tier, and you get the Ultimate IDP Index, which launches 6 days from today, which I'm so pumped about. If you're watching anywhere, share, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, like we said. But Bob, defensive line, it's often the narrative when I started playing IDP fantasy football was really one of you want a strong defensive line player, and that's who you want to target first, kind of as the centerpiece of your team. And that's something that I kind of took to heart. But as I've played IDP the last few years, I have found that to not necessarily be the best strategy, or even a strategy that's worked for me. I can say I've, Myles Garrett, everybody seems to have him as the number one guy, but I've had him on several dynasty teams, and I can say, in all honesty, he has not really been a difference maker for me, which made me last year start to examine this concept of a zero defensive line draft strategy. That's obviously hyperbole. It's more of a late round defensive line player. But what are your thoughts on drafting the defensive line position in 2021 as far as dynasty goes?
100% agree. There's that tier of maybe one to three guys that are really great at DL. Chase Young now, TJ Watt if he's eligible at DL, and then it kind of dries up quick. So if you can get a guy at value, sure, but that's not going to happen. Those guys are super premier value, high value type players that'll go early. I've kind of taken it to heart too that I'm much more likely to stream the position. I've always kind of related the defensive line to tight end, in that if you miss out on that top tier of guys, you're probably looking at the huge second tier or bigger third tier of guys, which personally I've found to be a lot more streamable. You can kind of play matchups more and stuff like that. So that's how I've always attacked it. If I can get, a Chase Young trade for one somehow, or if I can get a TJ Watt, if he's eligible somehow, Zadarius Smith even, if I can get those guys at a value, Zadarius Smith is probably the best value you can get just based off of he's not one of those big names. But otherwise, you're looking at that kind of second tier of guys, or the past the 12 spot there, of guys that you can get pretty cheaply and you can stream on the regular. Look for bad offensive lines, teams that allow a lot of sacks. When I write my stream team articles during the year, that's one of the things I look at is teams that give up a lot of sacks, run a lot of plays, things like that really make the defensive line streamable. I'd rather not invest if I don't have to. I'd rather invest in a more steady Eddie type of asset, like a linebacker. Even some safeties are more steady at the position in terms of production, whereas your D line, more often than not, if even the top tier guys, if you're getting a sack or two a game, like you're happy, but like most guys don't contribute a tackle floor, so it's like, okay, what am I doing? I'm praying. It's similar to the tight end in that, okay, you're hoping for a touchdown, you're hoping for a sack.
Yep.
So that's, in a roundabout way, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I know, and you pretty much hit the nail on the head. It seems like you're some ways you're hamstrung or stuck to the sack. You're kind of just hoping for the sack because a lot of defensive line players don't come with that safe tackle floor. Now, there are certain guys that do come with that, but even some of those guys, that's more how they make their value because they don't have the boom upside of the sack. So zero DL strategy, I just pulled this banner up a second ago. I'll pull it up one more time. Like, for instance, Zadarius Smith, Jason Pierre-Paul, both of these players were guys that were being drafted well into the 20s last year in dynasty startups, very late, and they popped, and, you had guys going much earlier than that, who are some examples of, like, Cameron Jordan. He was a guy very highly drafted this year, didn't pan out, Sam Hubbard was going very highly drafted after he turned in a big sack or a big tackle total season the year before. Didn't pan out. You were able to get players like Jason Pierre-Paul, who finished, just a few points behind that second and third spot, depending on your format, for next to nothing. I routinely saw, I think he was drafted consensus defensive line player 29 coming into the season, if my notes are right here. I'm looking at finished as, Montez Sweat was another player who you could get outside of that top 10, 15, even 20 sometimes, that was pushed up into the top 10. So I'm definitely approaching the line or the defensive line position with less emphasis going forward. I don't know if that's going to be something more people do or not, but like you said, it seems like it's streamable, especially against poor QB play, poor performing teams. You can kind of see what teams are struggling, and there's always a pass rusher available. And
I mean, you look at there's two edge players on each team, so you're looking at a pool of about 64 players. And a lot of them are playing opposite of these stars like Garrett, Watt, Bosa. Granted, Bosa is a terrible example because Ingram was the other guy on the opposite side. He was hurt all year, and in my opinion, he's pretty washed. But some people might not agree. But go ahead with what your point was.
Well, I was just going to say, the overemphasis of the sack play too. You really aren't counting on a sack when you get a defensive line player. Like you said, you're looking for that, but you can't really count on it. So, trying to pinpoint that guy who's going to get double-digit sacks, it's really not even a very viable strategy. I mean, look at that list I just pulled up a minute ago. I mean, you had several guys here. Jason Pierre-Paul didn't have double-digit sacks. Montez Sweat didn't have double-digit sacks. Harold Landry didn't. I mean, J.J. Watt and Harold Landry didn't even combine for double-digit sacks, and they're both top 10 defensive line players. So when I hear people, giving defensive line fantasy analysis, if you can call it that, and they talk about double-digit sacks, I'm like, what is this really based off of? Like, what does that really truly mean? I mean, double-digit sacks, 10 sacks is 60 points if they're, you got to get a lot more than 60 points if you're going to be a top guy. So tell me what else this player can do. That's kind of why I'm not as high as on Carl Lawson as a lot of people are, because they're like, oh, when he gets his sack regression, I'm like, great, he'll have 40 tackles and 12 sacks and nothing else. That sounds a lot like Harold Landry to me. So but Harold Landry even can bat some passes and stuff like that. I mean, Carl Lawson's way too gassed up for me if I'm just being completely for real right now, especially in dynasty formats. Yep.
Yeah. I'm honestly a big fan of Landry. I think he actually brings, he brings that tackle for loss floor, tackle floor, and he drops back. Like you said, he can, have his pass deflections and stuff too. I don't know. I've grown to be a big fan of Harold Landry. He was my DL2 in my championship winning team this year. And I needed like 3.5 points out of him, and he got me like 5. So I, shouldn't be a big fan of that because of that, but I've turned into a bit of yeah, exactly. I've been a bit of a Harold Landry fan ever since. So
hey, you owe it to him. Let's talk about the tackle floor. Now, this is something when I'm looking at the defensive line position that I'm looking for guys that have a safe tackle floor. And, kind of what I call that elite tackle floor for a defensive line player is right around 50 combined tackles. And you would be surprised some of the players who have not had 50 combined tackles that are in that people talk about in that upper tier of defensive line. First player that always comes to mind is, I feel like I'm always dumping on him, but it's Myles Garrett. He had his highest tackle total of his career this year. He had 48. That's just not an overly safe floor. I want, that's honestly, that's just not a very safe floor. I want a guy, and that's why I like TJ Watt. And, you do get some of these outside linebackers. They do get a few more tackles for whatever reason. They push up to like that 55, 60. That's what I'm looking for. Joey Bosa is very good at this. Danielle Hunter is very good at this. They come through with big tackle numbers. It's really interesting to look at Khalil Mack because Khalil Mack is basically the same player he was for Chicago that he was for the Raiders, except his tackles have really gone down a lot. He used to be like a 70 tackle guy and like a 12 sack guy. Now he's like, more like a 45, 50 and 10 guy. And what really, really hurts, assuming sacks come and go, it's that his floor for his tackles has gone down so much. Just kind of crazy, but it just shows you that the scheme guys are in really can affect their floors and ceilings.
Yeah, man, 100% agree.
And that's something else I look for when I'm looking at my defensive tackles, which is why I'm kind of more pro DeForest Buckner than I am pro Aaron Donald, especially in Dynasty right now, because DeForest Buckner can put up 55, 60 tackles, 65 tackles a season, I think is what he's been averaging. Aaron Donald barely ever, I think his biggest season's just shy of 50. So again, it just comes down to looking at skill sets, looking at floor versus ceiling, and guys that have floor and have ceiling. That's one of the things I really, really like about DeForest Buckner. We're trying not to talk too much about players today. We're trying to talk a little bit more about theory, about how we're managing the position. I say that, but we are going to talk about some guys we are, looking to draft versus some guys that we are looking to avoid. We will get to that just a little bit later. Let's talk about streaming. So this is something you did a lot this season when you wrote your article. So how did you look at streaming? And I'll just go ahead and say my way of looking at streaming is I'm a lot less concerned than a lot of people are about one-on-one matchups. So when I'm looking at, a pass rusher, I'm not looking just at the PFF grade of the tackle or the guard across from him. Now, I hear a lot of people talk about that a lot, and I feel like, that's great, but that's, this is a team sport. So when I look at my pass rushers, I'm really looking for a guy who gets a shitty team, a shitty quarterback. Like, who's playing Danny Dimes this week? That's who I want to stream. I don't care if Danny Dimes has the best offensive line in football. I still want to stream the defensive line players that are playing Danny Dimes this next year. Why? Because I know Danny Dimes is a walking fumble machine. Same with Kirk Cousins. He's a great quarterback, but you give him a little bit of pressure, and that's money for defensive line players. Carson Wentz. I think it's going to be funny when Carson Wentz still gets a lot of sacks behind this Colt offensive line this next year. But that's more how I look at it. I look for weak quarterback play. Maybe guys like Haskins this year, where it's like, oh, maybe he gets pulled out of a game. Guys are in a rocky situation, and then they put in a backup. Like, that's money for sacks. That's more what I do versus looking at the offensive lineman across from them. But how do you attack the streaming of the defensive line position?
So I'm pretty big on looking at the offense they're facing as a whole So, like you mentioned, bad quarterback play is always a good focus. But I'm looking at, plays per game, which I know you're not a huge fan of. I look at plays per game, how often the team throws the ball, because they're dropping back to pass more, obviously. And then how many sacks per game on average that the team they're playing allows. And then it comes down to, for the players themselves individually, I like to look at, again, kind of plays per game, because usually that tells the tale of how much they're on the field. That opens up percentage of opportunities and all that. But, I'm not going to, go grab the second string DL, depending on who it is. If he's, like Emmanuel Agba was a great stream team guy last year. Romeo Okwara, great stream team guy last year. And, in redraft leagues especially, these guys were free pickings off the waiver wire, week in, week out. And they were guys that were on, 3, 4, 5 weeks of my articles, and they, hit damn near every week. So those things are a lot of what I take into account. And like I said, you got to be able to have the guys that are available too. I don't like to necessarily just throw out, guys that are, not last year. Oh, Chase Young has a good matchup this week. Yeah. Okay. Who cares? You're starting Chase Young anyway.
Yeah. It's completely,
but, like the lesser name guys that you have to take a second look at, those middle kind of those DL2s, DL3s, even, wherever you want to lump them into in this full season, those are the guys that I think are really money for defensive line, especially if you're going to kind of punt the position a little bit and kind of chase guys later. Those are big guys for me. Agbo, like I said, was a favorite, and so was Aquara. I know Olivier Vernon was hot there for a few weeks. Like I said, so those are the things I looked at. DL was a position that all those things really tracked in terms of, how accurate it ended up being. In some weeks, obviously, it's not going to track 100%. It's just not. But, those were things that tracked damn near every week very consistently. So teams that pass the ball a lot, teams that allow sacks, teams that run a lot of plays, that opens up a ton of opportunity for these guys to get sacks. But yeah, I mean, that's in a nutshell how I break it all down.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like you kind of have a similar approach to me, where it's a little more holistic than just offensive line matchup.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, again, it's so much about the quarterback. I mean, ultimately, you can beat your assignment 100 times out of 100, but if you can't get to the quarterback, what does it all mean for IDP? It doesn't mean anything.
Yep.
That's another reason I like Trey Hendricks, because for all of his faults, he's a finisher. He gets to the quarterback. He finishes the play. He's not just affecting the quarterback. He's when he gets the pressure, he's making sure that it counts. That's kind of the Trey Hendrickson, Carl Lawson is going to be like a big thing for a while. And like I said the other day, it's going to end up being where one of them just ends up getting hurt. We'll never know who's better or whatever,
right.
But we'll argue about it for months.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on Lawson. I just, I wrote him up for a waiver wire article last year, and I was just like, the whole time I was like, is this really it? I went back and I looked at his whole career, and I'm like, okay, well, he got injured.
There's nothing there except for quarterback hits, tackles, and sacks. That's it. Yeah. And on 1,800 snaps, the numbers that he's got aren't as good as these deep metrics 100%. Might make you think.
Yep, I agree, 100%. He was just, 100% I agree. It's just I was writing him out.
They're gonna hate them. The world's gonna hate us because he, his pass rush win rate is just.
Where did he end up signing?
The Jets.
Oh, who cares?
Well, he's gonna be on the field a lot.
Yeah,
and he's got Big Q next to him. I like Big Q. Big Q came through last year.
He was all right.
Big Q. Yo, you remember when Ed Oliver was future defensive tackle 1? Remember the good old days?
What a time to be alive.
Yeah, just seems like 2018 was just the other day.
Yeah, man, that's rough. I need to write him down. I need to go back and look at him, because I've been with other research stuff. I need him on my list of stuff to look at.
I don't think he's even in. I'm looking at my at my Black Ops tier right now, or my the Ultimate IDP Index. He's not even in my top 130 right now.
Why would he? Honestly, like
I don't know, just
you
to
know,
save
like
my ass.
he's name value at this point. You
Yeah,
know,
no, he is. He is.
hate to say it, I
He's.
think whatever. But sorry, Bills
I
Mafia. You know.
there could be something there. He's the
Right.
defensive tackle position's got to develop. Not everybody is DeForest Buckner or Aaron Donald, which is why these guys should get. Which is why DeForest Buckner needs more shine than he gets.
Yeah.
Drives me nuts that nobody.
I think it's coming because with him, I don't think he broke out really right away either. I think he took a couple years to
He's been good
really get
forever
hot.
though.
So, well, yeah, I mean, he's been in the league, I think, going on 6 years. It feels like, at least. But I think the shine's coming because they really felt his presence when they went up against Tennessee and Derrick Henry without him, and it's
he made some noise.
Henry running up all over the field, right through the gut, and it's like, I wish we had Buckner.
Yeah,
but
he'd have been
I love Buckner. I'm a big fan, man. Honestly,
I don't. I have a hard time having him not be my defensive tackle one, just because.
Do it.
Well, I never said I didn't. Maybe I do. You can find out for $13 a month. Black Ops tier, the Patreon, ladies and gentlemen. Sign up. Join the IDP Army for real. Okay. Hey, we're going to be in Canton at the expo together. Me, Bob, Hustler. We're going to be holding it down for the IDP Army. Y'all already know what it is. Come see us if you are in Canton, if you want to hang out with the coolest guys in the industry. I mean, we'll find them and we'll lead you to them, and you guys can have a good time. Maybe we'll tag along. All right, where are we right now? My notes are a little shady over here. Okay, let's talk about rookies. Okay, we're about 20 minutes in. We've talked a little bit of general strategy. And guys, gals, hit us up on Twitter, on YouTube. Leave comments if you want. If you have questions about these strategies, if you want to see any notes or articles that we have in the background, we will definitely link you guys up. This isn't the first time I've talked about 0 DL strategy. There's a video back on the channel, and even going back into last year, I was kind of talking it up. You can search the hashtag on Twitter, so look it up. There's generally, like we said, this is the defensive line position. While it is good, it's kind of, in my opinion, it's one that I think has been overemphasized. The sack has been overemphasized. The position has been overemphasized a little bit for IDP as far as practicality purposes. Like I said, the teams that I have Nick Bosa on, and the teams that I have Myles Garrett on, and the teams that I have Chase Young on, they're good teams, but they have not been difference makers that I wanted. And I've sat there many weeks wishing that I had Roquan Smith or Blake Martinez on this team instead of this guy. So going forward, I'm going to be pushing for people to, step back from the defensive line position, especially early in your dynasty drafts, because you can pick guys up on your waiver wires, throughout the season. You can stream positions. Guys break out all the time. Leonard Williams decided to go to the Giants and break out. You know what I mean? Quinnen Williams decided to break out this year. Trey Hendrickson decided to break out this year. These are guys that you got for almost nothing. You could have got for 4th, 5th round picks, waiver wire picks last year. Now they're in people's top 24. There's no reason to waste that pick on a guy unless you really just are a huge fan, which in that case, go crazy. But Bob, let's talk about the defensive line position as far as the rookies, y'all. I know it's taken us a while to get there, but let's talk rookie defensive line players. Who are your top 5 rookie defensive line players coming into this class, and just give us a breakdown on who they are, what they do, and why you like these guys.
All right, so I don't like all of them, but okay. I will say they're all up there. The first one we'll talk about is going to be probably the biggest, the belle of the ball for a lot of people, and that's Gregory Rousseau out of Miami. A lot of people are, he is a freak athlete. I'll give him that. He had great production in his 1 year starting. You can't ignore production, but when I looked at the film, I wasn't all that impressed. It seemed like, he was kind of a guy that lucked into more plays than not. But again, you can't ignore the production at the end of the day. He was there to luck into that play, whatever, that's kind of, opinion based anyway. But so he's a guy, like I said, freak athlete. He's 6'7", 270 something. He's a big dude, and he won with his athleticism. So if he can learn to win with strength at the next level, I think he's a guy. The thing is with a lot of these guys, I think they all need a year to develop. I don't think any of these guys are going to be the, big breakout guy year one, and that'll be reflected in the draft capital too. But he's like I said, probably the first one to be
Russo
worth
one.
talking about.
Yeah, he was a guy that I heard. He was a guy I definitely heard the rumblings about before anybody else this last year. Similar to the way you heard the rumblings of Chase Young, similar to the way you heard the rumblings of Nick Bosa coming in. Russo was that guy, so it makes sense that he would be number one. Who you got number two?
Number two, and probably more of my favorite, is Joseph Osai out of Texas. He produced really well as well. He's kind of an interesting player. The one thing that stuck out on his film a lot is that how he kind of sets up on some of his plays. He sets up like in a block position right away. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, it's just something you don't see very often. It's like he's banking that it's going to be a run and he's trying to get into a block shed position right away, and if it's on a run play, it usually ends up fine. But when it ends up being a pass play, he completely, is basically phased out of the play because he's getting eaten alive by a tight end or a offensive lineman. But, he's got a high motor. He's a quick guy. And like I said, his production was really good. And I think you've seen, I don't know if the people out there have seen, I've been breaking down their college production as starters in IDP 1, 2, 3 points per game scoring, and doing more research on that to see if that actually means a single thing in the NFL. And it actually, so far, the ones with high points per game in college, believe it or not, production tracks from college to the NFL more often than not. He was a guy that graded out pretty well on that scale. The next guy, and I think a lot of people are going to be pretty high on Jalen Phillips, also out of Miami. The big thing with him is going to be the injury concerns. He's only played, a handful of games, or he's missed a handful of games over the last 2 years. So I mean, that's going to be a big thing for him, but he's a pretty balanced guy, good against the run, good against good against pass rushing, I should say, or good with pass rushing. But, like I said, not quite the production that Osai or Russo had, but again, he was still very, very productive. And just kind of, he's one of those guys that stands out on film. The film actually looked a lot better to me than Russo's. And like I said, to me, it's all arbitrary anyway. I'm not a professional scout, but to me, Phillips, looked like a lot more of a really good pass rusher and a really good runner. Do you have thoughts on any of these guys so far?
Dude, I have said it once. I'll say it 100 times. I don't watch college football. The last full game of college football I watched was when Deshaun Watson played at Clemson, and I think that was 2015 or 16. That was the last full game I watched. I did watch part of the Texas OU game this year, the one that went to like double or triple overtime. That was like a crazy game. I did watch part of that game. I usually watch part of a college football game a year. So I'm not in that whole world, unfortunately. I think that college sports are a corrupt institution. I know that people are probably like, Jordan, that's the word. I'm like, it just is what it is, okay? I don't like it. So I don't support it. And it's awesome that these guys get to go to college. I mean, who the fuck wants to go to college in 2021? Nothing happens to you there except you go into debt. But whatever. I mean, it's the pathway. It's the assembly line that the American dream has set up for these people. And until private money comes in a form of non-education, like smaller leagues, and these guys can go through systems like that, college will essentially be what it is, which is just minor league sports right now. And it's a way for institutions to make. I'm going on a rant. Institutions are, the NCAA is bad. I'm not a huge college sports fan, but if you're into it, you're into it. But I don't have any opinion on any of these guys really, because like I said, I haven't really watched a lot of this tape. That's why I brought you on, because I know you are deep into this world. I know you've been scouting these guys for a while. Like, I have notes on some of these players. I do listen to the overall narrative around, the rookies coming in. I try to watch, I follow some good actual NFL scouts. So I'm aware of who they like, who they don't like. I'm looking at that stuff, but I'm always going to defer to people that are much more ingrained into that for analysis, because that's just not what I'm good at. So I don't have an overall super opinion. I mean, literally, when I'm doing drafts and stuff for rookies coming in, I'm looking at the information that you put out usually, or some of these other draft people. And I'm just people I trust. I'm using the information that they give me. So, oh no, Bob froze. Y'all, what's up? I see there's 2-3 people in here. Give me some comments. We are going to see if Bob comes back in a minute. Retweet this or whatever if you're watching on Twitter, because we're going to do like a live Q&A here in about 5 minutes. We will talk to you guys about anything you want IDP related. Anything defensive line related. If you have any trade questions, talk to us. We're going to briefly talk about the Seattle Seahawks, and they're bringing on Kerry Hyder, which is a pretty big signing, and Carlos Dunlap, re-signing him. This is a team that had no pass rush the last 2 years, essentially. And if you try and tell me Jadeveon Clowney had pass rush, I'll fight you. But they have two guys now who are legitimately good pass rushers. So things are looking up for them. Oh, looks like Bob's back. Bob, what up?
Sorry, my internet decided to cut out. Sorry about that.
Hey, it's all good.
Where were we?
You had just finished saying Jalen Phillips was, I believe, your third favorite rookie coming in, and I had just finished up a rant about how college sports were a scam. Or college,
yeah. I tend to agree with that narrative too. But another guy I can't leave here without talking about is Azeez Ojulari. A lot of people are very high on this kid. Super young. He's going to be 20 come draft day, which, it could be good, could be bad. Who knows? But another guy, he's going to need to develop, but he's a pass rushing freak. I mean, his bend, the way he gets to the quarterback is pretty dang impressive, how he creates his pass rush. But again, like I said, I think all these guys are going to need to develop one way or another. And the last guy I'll mention is my personal favorite, but I'm not going to rank him that high, is Patrick Jones out of Pitt. He struggled in the Senior Bowl, which sucks because that doesn't bode well for your NFL draft stock. But no, just the way he jumps off the line, the way he gets after a quarterback, he has a toolkit already. Something that can be kind of developed at the NFL level. He has a swim move, he has a spin move, he has a nasty chop, and the way he wins is with speed off the edge. And that's what I'm a big fan of personally. Those guys that can, if he gets even, quarter to the O-line before the O-line's off the line, he's going to burn you every time. So
what are your thoughts?
I say 5 guys.
What are your thoughts on this? The guy that ran the 4.3 whatever yesterday, 3.7, 3.6 out of I forget his name. I literally just
Micah Parsons.
No, it was the defensive line guy, the edge guy that ran it right after him. He ran like a 4.6 something.
Owe?
Yeah.
Okay, he's a raw guy too.
He's not. Is he flying up your draft boards because he's fast? Because that's the way offense works, Bob. So we need to get it together. Okay, he's got to fly up the boards.
No, sorry.
Oh, damn it.
He's a second or third round pick. He's a day 2 guy, maybe.
Come on.
For me, at least. And that's with, like I said, I think he only has like 1 year. I'm not the hot take guy. But save that for the training camp films. I'll probably drop some dumb hot takes then. But no, Jason Owe, I watched his film, wasn't overly impressed. But again, he's a guy that, he only got 1 real year to start at Penn State. He was a rotational player before that. I think he played like 1 year completely reserved, didn't play. Then the next year he played limited snaps. And then this last year he played, 60, 70% of snaps and didn't really do a whole heck of a lot. So for reference, his production in his 1 year starting, he was at 9.1 IDP 1-3 points per game. Gregory Rousseau was at 17.
Yeah, I was gonna say 9.1 is not good. That's not good.
So that's just a reference, but
he ran really fast.
So I mean, like I said, he ran so fast, but good for him. Cool. Yeah. I'm not gonna, I'm gonna use these as a confirmation tool, not a, way to kind of
what do you call
a
those
hype
things?
tool, but
Yeah. All right, y'all. We are going to now transition the show. That's all five, right? That was all five of your rookies. You want to list them back off to us really quick, so everybody who's on the
yeah,
podcast can get them.
for sure. So I had Gregory Russo, Joseph Osai, Jalen Phillips, Aziz Ojulari, and Patrick Jones. Those aren't necessarily my top five in order, but those are just some guys I really like. Follow me on Twitter. I drop graphics all the time showing the college IDP's leaderboard. I'm up to 80 IDP rookies pulled with these points per game stats. And like I said, I've been going back and tracking like the top fives, top tens at each positions over the last few years. And this stuff really does track, that
Does it
puts
correlate? Is
you
there
up at a higher. Yeah,
there's
it
a
puts
real
you at
correlation? Nice.
there's a dead correlation. So for reference, like a linebacker nobody's freaking talking about. If you don't mind, I'll pivot a little bit. A
Go
linebacker
crazy.
nobody's talking about. Chaz Surratt has the highest out of 80 IDP rookies I've pulled with a 20 points per game. For reference, Darius Leonard and Luke Kuechly were at 26 and 25 respectively. So far there's no like monster in this class, like a Hall of Fame type player or, number one at LB or whatever. But, to me, and this guy's a former quarterback. He played quarterback for his whole life until 2 years ago. He switched to linebacker and he put up more points than anybody else in this freaking class. I'm like, and people are starting to kind of come around on him, but not nearly the effect I'd like to see. I'm a big fan of Chaz Surratt.
That's more glory for us, bro. That's easy pickings in round 3, round 4 if people are going to let them drop.
Amen.
All right, y'all, if you want to see more of the rookie stuff, the Patreon, the IDP Army Patreon, go check it out over there. Sign up for the Black Ops tier. We have the top 20 rookies in there. We're going to have the top 100 and 30, 40, 50. I mean, it's going to keep growing and expanding. It's an index of all kinds of IDP information. But now we're going to transition the show, kind of open it up for questions, AMA type stuff. We are going to bring on a newish member of the IDP Army. We're going to add Fantasy G.I. Joe in here. What's up, Joe?
What's up, fellas? Good show.
Hey, thanks. It's not over yet. The party just started. You just got here.
Heck yeah, I'm ready.
Well, I did mention earlier about Kerry Hyder and Carlos Dunlap going to the Seattle Seahawks. I know that was something that you were going to look a little bit into. What are your thoughts on this move for Seattle? And what do you think about these two kind of older defensive line players, but in, talking defensive line strategy as we just were, are these guys we should maybe be targeting as our, playable weekly defensive line players that you don't have to pay up for?
Well, absolutely. If I don't have them on my team and I'm, in the offseason like I am now, I would not heavily, but I would look out and see what the value is on Dunlap to his owner or Hyder. I personally like the Dunlap re-signing more than Hyder coming in for fantasy purposes because Dunlap just has a track record of, over the last 5 seasons, he has 38 sacks when, Kerry Hyder just has the 18 and a half. Hyder's had 2 good years sandwiched in between 2 injury-prone seasons and 1 season where he just disappeared. Now, bringing him in, I think, will be a good place for him. He's a good fit for Seattle. But if I were to have to pick between the two, I would see what you could get for Dunlap. I think he's a buy low right now. He's coming off the worst year he's had in almost his career. It's been a decade.
And it's not his fault either. The Bengals mismanaged him. They treated him kind of crappy. You saw once he got to Seattle that he was instantly back to his old self.
Well, and even in Cincy, for 10 years almost, he produced, 8 sacks almost on average. And they put their chips back into Dunlap. I mean, a lot of teams, I feel like after a down season, he's 32 years old, they would have let him walk in free agency and bring in Hyder. Well, they did both. So I really stick with Dunlap. But if and for fantasy purposes, if his current owner, values him high, see what you can get for Hyder. I mean, it's really just about the best value you can get for either one.
Yeah.
But they're both attractive D linemen. Like you said, I think your strategy on, no defensive lineman early is really the way to go. I sometimes fall in that trap where I like to have a connection. So I do like my, Nick and Joey Bosa stack.
I know.
I've done that before. So
it feels good. It feels good for like 6-8 months in the off season where you're just like, oh, this team's so good. Then you get to like week 3 and you're like, fucking get a sack already, motherfucker.
Absolutely. So yeah, you guys are getting ahead on that, and it's definitely the way to go. These guys are starting to play. I mean, Dunlap's 32 years old, just signed a 2-year contract where they're committed for 2 years. They're really not going to opt out of it.
Look at J.J. Watt too. I mean, just because you're older doesn't mean you're not still good.
That position, absolutely. I mean, J.J. Watt, I would have wrote off, 2 years ago, and this last year he finished top 12. And so yeah, the position definitely allows for them to age better and produce still at an older age.
Yeah. What you got any hard hitting analysis on the Seahawks pass rush coming into this next year, Bob?
Man, like you said, if I can get whichever one's a better value, Dunlap on the cheap, I'd probably go that way as well. Hyder, like you mentioned, doesn't have a ton of, whereas Dunlap's been a solid producer pretty much throughout his career, even on a bad team like the Bengals. Sorry, Bengals fans. Not really. So like I said, I tend to lean towards the best value. Dunlap, you said Jordan produced pretty much right away when he got to he was a stream team guy a lot of weeks. He was a wake up a lot of weeks. A lot of people dropped him, in a lot of leagues because he wasn't producing in Cincy anymore because he was just freaking done.
Yeah.
So they were just I lean Dunlap more than Hyder, but
I completely agree. I mean, these are guys you could be working a trade somewhere else and not even mention these guys and get that trade worked out and then probably get these guys thrown in for nothing. I mean, you really can. No one, the person that owns Dunlap from last year more than likely is considering dropping him if they haven't already, or would ship him off for almost nothing. I mean, Hyder, his owner might be a little higher because he's coming off 8.5 sacks, so a new signing, so he might be a little hyped. But Dunlap, I think you could get for basically nothing.
Yeah, IDP Army, y'all. I see some people out there in the audience. If you have any IDP questions, this is 3 of the most mediocre guys you could ask. So hit us with that goodness. We'll try and give you guys some good analysis as we're sitting here because, like we said, we talk about this defensive line. It seems to be a very polarizing position. It's hard to really nail down because a lot of people don't know what we're looking at. Are you looking at sacks? Are you looking at tackles? Are you looking at pressures? What's going to translate? What's not going to translate? People say follow the snaps, but in a modern NFL defense, it's so hard to find a guy, especially an outside pass rusher, who's playing a super high number of snaps because guys rotate in and out. They want to keep them fresh. To get a guy that's out there 90-95% of snaps, like a Myles Garrett, is very, very rare. And that's another thing, bone I have to pick with Garrett. For him playing as many snaps as he does on the edge, I would just like a little bit more in the tackle department. That just worries me. I would rather invest in the linebacker position personally.
Well, and to feed into what you're saying is Trey Hendrickson is case in point. I mean, I'm a Saints fan, and I've been holding Marcus Davenport for 3 years now, and then Trey Hendrickson comes out of nowhere and just posts up a great season, and that's something that you see every year, all the time, defensive linemen, but you don't see in linebacker hardly at all. There might be 1 or 2, but they don't come out of nowhere like these D linemen do. I mean, so it's just case in point on drafting these guys late.
Fair. What do you guys think about the signing of Anthony Walker to the Browns? Because historically, the past 5-6 years, the Browns have produced very good linebackers. This year, they had such a hodgepodge of guys. Nobody was even, I mean, they were below average across the board. Anthony Walker, in my opinion, is a majorly underrated linebacker. And if they signed him, I think that he's going to get the usage. I personally think that he's pretty much a lock for top 30. And I feel like that's almost a hedge, but I could see him pushing into that top 24, even assuming that he is the guy. And I don't think that they would have brought him in, a veteran on this team that they're putting together. They're building something on that Browns defense. In that middle linebacker position, it is relevant. It does matter. You guys think his stock is majorly up?
Yeah, I'd say I've been holding on to him.
No, go ahead.
My bad. I've been holding on to him for, over the last 2 years in the league. Just I was waiting for him to be a free agent. I honestly couldn't really think of a better spot for him to go off the top of my head. Out of that needs a linebacker that'll actually produce a solid linebacking number with a good linebacker there. I mean, you look at last year, B.J. Goodson was putting up respectable numbers. Mac Wilson's put up decent numbers when he started. Look at Anthony Walker there now. I'm a big fan. I think top 20, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, personally.
Nice. Yeah, I think that was probably one of the most, if not the most under the radar IDP sort of move so far. So, all right. Well, doesn't seem like it seems like everybody in the audience knows everything about IDP tonight. So, y'all, we'll give you 1-2 more minutes. If you got anything you want to ask us about the defensive line position, anything you want to ask us about IDP in general, any feedback, comments, we would love to answer that for you. But if not, we are probably going to go do other Friday night stuff. You know what I mean? Maybe watch a little bit of Winter Soldier and Falcon. Anybody watching that tonight?
No, I've been actually rewatching the Marvel movies in order, from their actual timeline. So I'll probably jump on Doctor Strange as my next film.
So you're pretty deep in, huh?
Well, I've seen them all once, but
yeah,
now I'm seeing what the storyline is. I'm catching so much more. It's
really,
awesome.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I still haven't watched it in that sort of framework, that sort of format yet. I need to.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
Winter Soldier. I'm excited for Winter Soldier and Falcon tonight, though, especially after that goofy ass cap they introduced this last week towards the end of the episode. Oh wait, oh crap! I don't know. Spoiler warning.
Oh, that's all good.
Oh, my bad, everyone. All right, well, that's it. That's the whole show. Thanks for tuning in, IDP Army, everyone who is out there. Thank you for everyone who is listening to the podcast. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you give us a thumbs up. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review. We got to keep the lights on, y'all, okay? We are going to be in Canton at the Fantasy Football Expo hosted by Bob Lung. We will be out there repping the IDP Army. We'll be repping IDP. We will have a booth. Come hang out with us. The 3 of us will be there. Alex is going to be there, 420 Hustler. Other IDP Army associates, we call ourselves the IDP Army Mercenaries. They'll be out there. Join the Patreon, guys. Join the movement. IDP Fantasy Football, inclusive, disruptive, proficient fantasy sports. Going forward, that's what we are going to be all about. As you already know, if you look back at our history, that's what we've been all about this whole time. So we appreciate you coming on this ride with us. Bob, hit them with some goodness on where to find you and what you're up to. And then, Joe, you tell them, and then I'll close this out.
So I've been pretty busy at Dynasty Rewind and at Fantasy Six-Pack doing a lot of draft profiles, preparing for the 2021 NFL Draft. On my Twitter, if y'all are following me. If not, you should, maybe, if you want. I've been doing a lot of research into rookie college production in IDP 1-2-3 scoring points per game. Like I've kind of mentioned, it is showing that it starts to track with NFL production. So for me, that's pretty exciting. And then Dynasty Rewind, we do a ton of draft coverage, looking at all the offensive prospects coming in, doing some defensive prospects on the Patreon. But our big thing right now is doing mock drafts, Dynasty rookie mock drafts, you name it. We're doing a huge mega mock tomorrow night with everybody on the team, some of our patrons, Sup Chev. Yeah, check us out. Like I said, my writing work is all at Fantasy Six-Pack. All my podcasting stuff is over at Dynasty Rewind. I guest with a bunch of people too. So thanks again for having me. Always a blast. Wish my internet wasn't coming in like crap right now. But again, thanks for having me, man. Always a pleasure.
Happy to have you.
Well, I'm not as cool as Bob, so but
That's
you
damn
can
right.
find me on Twitter at Fantasy GI Joe, and I'm just working behind the scenes for the IDP Army, starting out, so new to it, and I've been doing IDP for 3 years now, and I think Bob's onto something doing all that college in-depth look. I'm gonna probably have to steal some of his info just to catch up on what these guys actually are doing in college. So,
yes, sir.
But Bob, are you actually in any Devy leagues?
Nah, man. It's one of those things where I've always kind of looked not looked down Devy leagues, but I've always had the oh, those are for people who are just too patient for them to get to the NFL. And then I'm like, oh man, but like with all this college research I do, I should probably be in the Devy League. And I'm like, too many leagues to work. But because I do so much of my, college catch up. And granted, I wouldn't have to do it if I was in a Devy League. I'd already be caught up.
Yeah.
But I do so much of my work between, end of December, up till the draft, basically, looking at prospects. And this is my first year doing content. So, I mean, it's been a huge look. A Devy League might be on the horizon for me. Maybe we'll see. No promises there. Man, that'd be wild to do IDP Devy.
It exists.
I was curious. I figured, man, that sounds like it'd be right up your alley, man. So that's awesome.
Y'all out here trying to get high on your own supply. All right, IDP Army. Hope we didn't bore you to tears. We'll be back next week or a few days. I don't know. I'll need to look at the schedule. We will continue the series looking at the dynasty implications of the positions of the rookies coming in and how we are addressing the position in 2021. And I hope to see you back here in the near future. Take her easy.